Welcome to Belong. I'm Kevin McAleetsy. I recently had the chance to sit down with Phyl Terry. Phil's the founder and CEO of Collaborative Gain and author of Never Search Alone and Customers Included. Professionally and personally, Phyl has a passion for bringing people together to help them succeed. Phyl has a talent for creating the right spaces along with the right structure. Phil's work on Never Search Alone and their incredible free community for job seekers has helped tens of thousands of professionals work together to help each other find jobs they love. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Thank you. So Phyl, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So as you know, like this podcast is really about exploring belonging. And I feel like, initially I was thinking Phyl is an expert at cultivating belonging in business. But then I was like, you know what? This is Phil's life. You've been doing
Yeah,
this for many, many, many years now. Um,
yeah,
I'd love to talk about what got you started.
sure. And just so your listeners know, I think you and I met through the Never Search Alone
We
community,
did.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so that's my latest book. It came out just as the tech, job downturn hit. And one of the big ideas in that book is to have community and belonging, to build a job search council. And we set up a pro bono volunteer-led movement around the world that's now set up and run 3,000 of those actually.
Wow.
And we hope to get to 100,000 to 1,000,000. We think it's a really important new way for people to approach the job search and their careers and get the kind of support they deserve to make good decisions and build good careers. So that's what part of what I'm doing now. I also run Collaborative Gain, as you know, which is a private community of senior leaders in tech, which I started 20 years ago. But and that's going great. We have a number of product leaders and general managers and CEOs. I started that with Google and Amazon back in 2003 in the aftermath of the dot-com downturn. And we've had about 2,000 leaders go through the program. It's pretty it's a great community. I love running it. It's a real privilege to be with those leaders and to support them. But to your point, this goes back a long way. So my mom started the first council in 1960, okay, for elementary school teachers in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, where I grew up. So I watched her, and she taught me about the art of asking for help, which is a really critical part of my program and philosophy and how you build belonging. Because when you ask for help, when you create vulnerability and you're open, it builds trust and connection. In college, I was a student activist. I worked in the anti-apartheid movement. This is back in the 1980s. And I was the co-chair of my campus anti-apartheid coalition, but I also built an alliance of colleges and universities on the West Coast. And then I went to England and worked directly with the African National Congress in SWAPO as a volunteer, as a student leader in support of what they were doing. And back on campus in California, I created a council of the heads of different student organizations. Okay. And I brought them together and I said, listen, let's create an environment where we learn from each other, where we can ask for help. And at first they were like confused, like, wait, what do you mean? Like, so we can like do events together? I said, well, you could do that. Yeah. But the idea is more about as leaders of these student organizations, we need a support group. We need a way to ask for help and support each other. And when I was then in business school, I worked with McKinsey to set up the first CEO councils for Silicon Valley CEOs. This is in the early days of the internet. And then I went on to create Collaborative Gain councils, as I mentioned, in 2003. And that's been a big part of my focus. But I've also, along the way, I've created a number of other communities and movements. I've created Slow Art Day, which is a global event every year. We've had about 1,500 museums and galleries participate. It's a way of slowing down and learning how to look at art. The premise is simple. You take 5 pieces of art and each person looks for 10 minutes at each piece and then has a conversation about it. And it achieves a couple of things. One, it achieves visual literacy and a way to learn to look at art, but it also builds community and belonging because you have this shared experience together and then you share how you each saw the art and you get to look through each other's eyes, which is a great way of getting to know people. It's a great team building event. I have a whole free program where companies can download my moderator guide and my participant guide, and they can go run these slow looking events with their product teams and their executive teams. And a number of companies are doing that today. So using art to build a sense of belonging and trust and get some visual literacy, which everyone working in digital businesses needs. I also run something called the WBRG, the World of Business Reading Group. It's a high school business literacy program based on the philosophy of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. And it happens every summer. It's at WBRG.org. If any of your listeners have high school students, they're welcome to apply. They can go to WBRG.org and actually sign up to be notified when the applications go out in January. And we've had hundreds of students go through the program, and the students read selections of Warren Buffett's shareholder letters. And then we've built like a 120-page curriculum around that. And each class, each section has 10 or 12 students, and it's run in a Harvard Business School. All the faculty are Harvard Business School, Stanford Business School alums who've done something significant in the business world. And this is their chance to give back. By the way, if anyone listening is, an accomplished executive and wants to participate as a faculty member, it's an all volunteer program. They can go to WBRG.org and learn more about that. But here's something that most people don't know. One of Warren Buffett's greatest strengths, and one of the reasons he's been so successful, this is going to blow your mind. He's a great community organizer. Okay? What he has done, and he talks about this with his letters, his shareholder letters, he's been very explicit about the values and philosophy and the approach of Berkshire Hathaway, with the goal of cultivating a long-term loyal shareholder base, a community of shareholders. And then he does a community event every year. And I've taken many people out to that, where 40,000 people come together for an annual meeting. Most companies get 200 people, and some of them are crackpots. This is 40,000 long-term shareholders who share the philosophy and feel they're a part of a community. And it's remarkable, and the support of the shareholder base that he has crafted and cultivated has allowed him to do things that many other CEOs are not allowed to do in terms of the patience and approach that he brings to building that business. He's a community organizer who's generated billions and billions of dollars in value. It's really a remarkable story. And he's a mentor of mine. And when I say he's a mentor, he doesn't know me, okay? He actually knows me a little bit, but I don't call him. He doesn't have to take my calls at 2 a.m., and I don't have to listen to everything he says. His partner, Charlie Munger, taught me this concept. Charlie Munger talked about you need to learn from the eminent dead. And I thought, well, what about the eminent living as well? So I created this concept called DOD, Dead or Distant Mentor. The graveyards and bookstores are full of them. Anyone listening right now can get a mentor. And by the way, in my own research, 95% of leaders today don't have mentors. They don't have living mentors who are close to them, and they really regret that. And I say to them, do what Charlie Munger did. Benjamin Franklin was his mentor. Okay. Last time I checked, Benjamin Franklin was not living and breathing. And if you build what Munger calls a passionate relationship with someone like that, a mentor you don't know, a dead or distant mentor, and you really read and reread and think about them and the lives they led and the choices they made, it can have a profound impact. And they credit Munger and Buffett both living but also dead or distant mentors with their success, right? So, yeah, that's a long answer to your short
It was
question.
a fantastic answer. I love with collaborative gain, and even when you were talking about what you were doing back in college, you're
Yeah,
not just creating space. I've noticed you have a superpower of creating space and the right structure, for lack of a better word.
yeah, that's important. Yeah, well, I'm gonna give an example that some people cringe at, but I think it's really important. I see them as pioneers, which is AA. In 1937, when they started, there was no good solution for alcohol abuse disorder, for alcoholism. There was nothing. Now, today there are many programs, but Stanford Medical School did a meta analysis of all the research, and they said still, by far, the most effective program is AA. What AA did is they created a space, they created a safe place for alcoholics to come together, but they also created a program, a structure, right? It's that combination. So with the job search councils, it's not just, hey, come together and somehow theoretically be supportive of each other, but here's some of the things you need to think about. You need to think about candidate market fit, a concept I developed over 25 years of working with people in the job search, right? Which is to say, you need to think about what you want, but also what the market wants and how the market perceives you and your skills today. When you're going out to look for a job, your skills and experience are the product you're bringing to market. So you need to think about candidate market fit, and you need to have a structured approach to how you determine that candidate market fit. That's a key part of the Never Search Alone program, right? Now, if I had just written that book and said, hey, come together and support each other because the job search is lonely, I think that could have been helpful, but then what do people do together,
Yeah.
right? You really need to. I mean, that's what I spend years and years working on. My next book, Never Lead Alone, which I don't know when it's going to be out. I'm in the messy middle, which is 90% of the writing process. Probably 2 years at this point. It might be out next year. I was hoping to hit the fall of 25, but I'm not sure I will. We'll see. Um, but the point is I'm talking about people in jobs. Like, so never search alone to help you keep a job, never lead, help you get a job, never lead alone to help you keep that job, make an impact, get promoted, that kind of thing. And a core part of the never lead alone, yes, join a career council, right? Like the kind we run at Collaborative Gain, or you can set up your own or whatever. But the the equivalent to candidate market fit is what I call positive politics. You need to learn how to play politics, but not in the backstabbing, credit stealing way. You can play positive politics, a way that drives positive change for your customers and your colleagues, and also allows you to get that promotion you deserve. Many people who are good people do good work, put their heads down, and hope the work speaks for itself. But then they get passed over for promotions, right? And they wonder why, and they get mad. And sometimes they get mad and they quit, and they hurt themselves actually by so doing. And I say, well, pause for a moment. First of all, you need to understand, we all need to understand psychology better, you know, and there's something known as the availability heuristic. Okay. What that basically says is that we humans have a tendency to remember things that are right in front of us or we can easily recall. So that person in the company who's constantly promoting the work they're doing, we're going to think of them more easily. Whereas the person putting their head down, just trying to do good work that speaks for itself, we're not going to think about them because they're not available to us. So the person doing good work needs to keep doing good work. That's the sine qua non. That's the foundation. I don't want to help people learn how to play bad bullshit
Right.
politics. I want to learn how to play positive politics, which starts with and is most importantly around doing good work, building great products and services, building good companies, whatever it is. And layering on top of that, making sure that your boss and other key people know first your career goals, where you want to go, and they know what you're doing and what your team is achieving. Not in some kind of a credit stealing way, but in an honest but consistent way, making sure you remain top of mind. Because if you don't, you're going to fall victim to the availability heuristic. You're going to fall victim to the fact that they're not thinking of you, because if you just put your head down and do good work, you're not top of mind. I get that. I get why people want to do that. That's my proclivity as well. And I have learned I'm not that comfortable with the social media world where you're supposed to be a self-promoter. I like to promote the things I'm involved with and the people who are helping them. I don't love promoting myself as much. But you have to learn positive ways of doing that include you, but aren't necessarily only about
Right.
you know. And that's what I talk about in that next book. But the point that you're making is that I create environments, but I also create structure and theoretical frameworks and exercises, and a philosophy for what you can do together. And in particular, my focus in the business world is how to help people build careers that are built to last in a world that is ever changing and has instability baked at the core of it,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed, it's one thing to bring people together, but that isn't gonna magically create that connection, that vulnerability.
Right. Yeah. And in that case, that's why I focus on asking for help. Asking for help is a superpower. It can really put um, a lot of wind in your sails, a lot of support behind you. But in the court, in the case of bringing people together in a council, if people are openly willing to ask for help, which means they're vulnerable, it creates trust,
Right.
right? And if you're not willing to ask for help, I have seen organizations that run councils where they bring leaders together, but it's not founded on asking for help. And so they're just peacocking with each other in a small environment. And that creates no vulnerability, no trust. It's just a pain in the ass, frankly. I want to run in the other direction. It doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't help with growth and development. It doesn't help people manage through the challenges they have. It's just a way to peacock. And I'm not, I think peacocks should peacock, but I don't think humans
Right.
should.
Yeah, I mean, it almost just becomes performative.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, shoot me now. Or as we said in LA when I was growing up, gag me with a spoon.
Love it. You formed Collaborative Gain around the time of the dot-com bust, and I'm sure there were a
Yeah.
lot of career challenges. What when did you start, and what inspired you to kind of take that approach you were using to build your own business to really help
Yeah.
others in that job search? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's such a novel approach to it.
So at the time, I was CEO of a company called Creative Good, and we were pioneers in customer experience and product management. People like Marty Kagan were our clients. And, we were sort of flying high in the dot-com era. And then the crash happened, and it hurt us badly. We survived it, but just barely. We had to lay everybody off more or less. It was really, it broke my heart. It totally did. And of course, it was very. We had to do the first round of layoffs just before
Oh,
Christmas of 2000.
painful.
It just killed me. And of course, it was worse for the people we laid off. It was just gut punch. And we had built a great culture, and I really cared about those people. And we just crashed, right? We had no funding. And so there was no magic source of money. And we ended up doing another round of layoffs, which was a total bummer. And we ended up, down to like two or three people. And we made it through, but it was a depression. That was a depression in the internet world. It was a smaller world, but it was a depression. What we have today in the tech world is way bigger. We have a recession. The number of people out of work relative to the number of people in work, it's not approaching what it was back in the dot-com era. But, you know, a number of the people laid off today have been in jobs for 10 or 12 or 14 years. And this is the first time they've had to look. Some of them are in their 40s or 50s. Whereas in the dot-com era, we were all in it for just a few years, and most of us were really, really young, you know. And it's easier to bounce back when you're young. It's still hard, and the people I laid off will tell you that was no fun for them. It was much worse, obviously, for them than it was for me. But it was, and that, that was really when my passion for, creating a program for people to manage their careers started. And because I started now advising and coaching a number of people who had been laid off in this wasteland that the internet was for a couple of years after the dot-com bust. And those of us who were still in jobs, and that included people like Marissa Meyer at Google and Mariam Mohit at Amazon and a woman named Elizabeth Peasley at Travelocity, I went and spoke to them and I said, I'm thinking about creating a community and a council that brings, people who are working in product management together. Would you like something like that? It's not a conference. There's not going to be speakers and sponsors. It's going to be a safe place for you to ask for help. And they were like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And by the way, Elizabeth Peasley is still a part of the program today. She's a moderator of one of our product councils. She was VP of product back then at Travelocity, and she's just absolute dynamite. She's dynamite. We're so lucky. I'm so lucky. We're so lucky that she's been a part of the program since day one. We have several people. Mary Baumgartner is moderating another council. She was on that first council, and she was at HBO running their internet stuff at the time. And this, going back to 2003, right? And she today is a moderator of one of our councils. It's a real community. I mean, it's a business, but what people will tell you is that it feels like a community. It's not transactional. It's long-term. We're long-term oriented. We have a number of people who've been members of it for 20 or 25 years who've used it to go from director of product to CEO of public companies, and I love that kind of longitudinal focus of collaborative gain. We're just not transactional. Yeah, we have to collect fees because we have to have money to run the business, but that's not what it's about. We collect the fees so we can create a community that will really help nurture people's careers over the long run and give them the kind of support that nobody gets, where you can really be open and you build deep friendships over many years. And that's a great, great, great good. We live in a world where people are lonely and they lack friendships. So yes, I'm focused on helping people, get jobs, get promoted, whatever. But at the end of the day, I really want to help them get friendships, build community and support that transcends, whatever job they have that day.
Right. But what brought you to shift that perspective from, helping those currently in a job to putting in what was it, 10 years to build this program for job seekers?
Well, so I'm not like a career coach,
Oh,
right? And I don't actually have a business around career coaching. Around job coaching. I coach people in jobs, but I wasn't. But what happened is a number of these members of the councils, would inevitably leave a job or get laid off, and we'd have conversations, and it was like, I started advising them, without charging, but really seeing that the way people look for a job was just upside down. It was just bad. And that we needed to bring a product management lens to redefining this product, call it the job search product, if you will, right? People were just spraying and praying. They weren't thinking about what they wanted. They weren't thinking about what the market was, where the market was at. And of course people don't know how to look for a job, because they spend most of their time hopefully in a job. So their expertise isn't product management or marketing or GM or whatever it is. And so once in a while when they need to look for a job, they don't know how to do it. And the way it works has not been reinvented. Like, we created things like Indeed and LinkedIn, but those were not a reinvention of the job search itself. They brought important tools. I mean, we didn't have the ability to network the way we do today with LinkedIn. It's a great tool. I love that tool. And they brought, jobs from the classifieds in the newspaper in a local city to a national or even global thing like Indeed has. Those are important programs. But what they didn't touch is how people went about looking and how they thought about themselves and how they approached the market. They didn't touch the loneliness of it. When you leave a job, you're usually working on a team, you're leading a team, and then you're all by yourself, you know, and that amplifies insecurity, fear, anxiety, which everyone felt. That's an important point from Never Search Alone, which is people think, oh, I'm the only one who feels the fear and insecurity. No, accomplished CEOs feel the fear and insecurity. Every single person who goes through a job search of any kind, a board search, a job, feels the insecurity and fear and loneliness. And it's just, I can't believe, given my experience with councils, and my mom started the first one in 1960, and I did the first one in college, and then with McKinsey and the CEOs, and then that it took me this long to do this. Actually, the question isn't why did I do it? Why didn't I do it earlier? It's so obvious that we need this kind of support for everyone who's looking for a job, right? And that we need a structured program. And so after the dot-com bubble burst and things started to get better, I started to think about this, and then the great financial crisis came along, and then that led to some layoffs, and I'm like, God, we have to do this better. And so I just started testing and iterating. And it took me about 10 years to write the book, but it took me about 20 years in total to iterate the approach. It took 20 years for me to coin candidate market fit. I finally nailed that just before the book was done. Can you believe that? Again, that's such an obvious
Right.
concept. Of course, right? But we didn't have. It was just. It's been a neglected area. As a society, we have not paid attention to the methodology of the job search, to how we think about. We have not brought our best minds. So, I tried to tap into the smartest people I know, like Alison Mnookin, who's a professor at Harvard Business School and a former CEO. Her Mnookin two-pager is in the book. It's an important part of the approach. So I tapped into all these smart minds. I did 300 interviews. I had hundreds of people test the book. Went through 400 drafts. I wanted to create something that was a real contribution to how we think about looking for a
Right.
job.
Right.
And I think I might have achieved that. I think it is. It's not. I think it adds something new.
Oh, Ed, most definitely, I would agree. I wanna
Yeah.
first acknowledge the fact that you have people in your collaborative game councils that have been there for so many years. That outlives almost all the communities I see.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Real community is long lasting, right? So there's a lot of community in the business world, but they're short term. They're short term and they're often transactional in nature. So I wanted something long term. Now there's a trade off with collaborative gains councils where I have people in there for 20 years, 25 years, whatever. Well, we haven't been going for 25 years, so it's 22 years at this point. Um, when you have that, there's a trade off. You have to build that kind of environment. You're not going to quickly scale.
Right.
So I don't think that kind of long lasting community scales. I think I think this isn't software. This is people and relationships. And so, but in my day job, I was helping companies scale by helping them build better product management teams and customer experience. But in my, evening job, I was building this community of people in that world, but I was taking it offline and creating real community based around trust, around asking for help, around real commitment to each other and to being vulnerable. And if you can scale that, by the way, I haven't learned how. So what I've scaled is not the size of the community, it's the depth. It's the depth and longevity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and if your goal is now to create more councils, but keep the size manageable, I think that's phenomenal because if you try to get 30, 50 people into a council, you lose that personal connection.
Oh, no, yeah, it needs to stay small. And now with Never Search Alone, I said to myself, you know what? People are so focused when they're looking for a job. They're willing to put in extra work. I bet we could create a free community where people run these themselves with the methodology, exercises, and training and support from us. But I wanted to make it free for three reasons. One, I wanted to honor my mom. But two, I also wanted to make it clear that if you join a job search council and part of the Never Search Alone community, whether you're a moderator of that council or a member, you own that. You're responsible. We'll give you the tools and we'll give you training and support, but we can't hold your hand. And I don't want to hold your hand because one of the great things you need to learn as a job seeker and as a leader is to take what I call become the I in village. There may not be an I in team, but there's an I in village. Okay. The I, individual, independent, responsible, but with a village of support around yourself. And if I were to put together an expensive program, first of all, I couldn't reach that many people with it, which I want to really redefine how people look for a job at a large level, cultural level. But then also they would tend to become passive and expect to be taken care of as customers. And I want them to be active leaders of their own search, right?
Right.
And I think we've made at least a modest contribution around that.
Definitely. And the fact that you're over 3,000 of these peer councils and Never Search Alone is phenomenal. I
Isn't it?
I came
Yeah, it really
across the
warms my
community
heart.
when you were at 200.
Oh yeah. So what number council were you on?
290.
290. Did you moderate
I
that?
did not initially, but then picked that up.
And so for your listeners who are looking for a job and thinking about joining the Never Search Alone community, first of all, do you recommend it, and do you recommend they become a moderator?
Highly recommend both.
Yeah.
There
Why?
when you're a moderator, there are so many resources supporting you at the kind of meta level so that you can help run things effectively for your team. But that moderator is so incredibly important to the success of that council and everyone in it.
Yeah.
I've noticed,
Yeah.
job search councils that don't have a strong moderator or who have kind of a laissez-faire moderator
Yeah.
are just not getting as much out
They're
of it.
not as effective. Yeah, they're not getting as much out of it. And you as a moderator, yeah, you get more support, which helps you in your job search, but you also help support these others, which also boosts your own confidence, doesn't it? And gives you a sense of, meaning and purpose that, you can very much lose when you're out in the job search by yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm really glad you did that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
wanna ask you one question about the, job search councils. So when you do
Yeah.
your peer councils for collaborative gain, you are bringing together product managers, and
That's
the
right.
product managers are, all coming in with the domain expertise and learning how to be
Yeah.
vulnerable, how to ask questions. But I've noticed
Yeah.
with the Never Search Alone community, the focus is much more on finding others at the same level in their career as you, but
Yeah.
not necessarily with the same discipline. And at
Right.
first, it kind of surprised me. I thought, okay, maybe it's just not enough people have signed up yet.
Right.
But I've found I really appreciate the diversity of perspective. Was that
Yeah.
intended in what you built?
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, even with our paid counsels, so we have a number of paid counsels. And to be clear, that typically the company sponsors the executive. They're usually a director, VP, chief product officer, or a CEO, GM, whatever. And we have some that are all product, and then we have some C-level councils where you'll have a CPO, a CTO, a CMO. It's cross-functional because the more senior you get, what your job is about is influencing across the organization as well as down through the organization, right? So that's very valuable. But earlier in your career, you're very focused on your domain, and so we reflect that. With Never Search Alone, though, we found some of the councils, some of the job search councils are only product people, and some of them are a mix. And we have an algorithm that basically looks at who's applied and brings people together around peer level. I like, and I write about this in the book, I like the mixed discipline groups because a couple of reasons. One, it's always helpful. You're going to really be able to tap into some different networks. If you put product managers together who don't know each other, you're going to have different networks. But if you put a product manager and a marketing person and so on together that don't know each other, boy, those networks are going to be really different. And those are important. But also, they're going to come with a different perspective, and they're not going to be competing with you for a job, right? So they're looking for marketing jobs, not product jobs. In fact, if they go grab a marketing job, they might know about a product opening in that company and be able to bring you along. Yeah. So I like the diversity. But I leave it open to people when they create their own job search, because you can either create your own job search council and tap into us, or you can come to us and we'll match you with other job seekers. If you're going to do it on your own, I love the diversity. I recommend it. I think it brings more viewpoints, perspectives, and networks together.
And it's such a strong community with an accompanying Slack community that you can find people from other disciplines, or I'm sorry, if you're on a mixed
From your
council, but
own.
you can find others, who do the same thing you do, and get that support.
And isn't there just a great heart to this community?
Love it.
Isn't that? Yeah. I think it's surprising to people, right? Because you don't expect that in a business community, which tends to be more networky or transactional or something like that. There's people who come to Never Search Alone seem to have a real heart to them and a willingness to be giving and open and to ask for help in a vulnerable way, which is giving, counterintuitive to many people.
Right. But I almost think, I shouldn't say but, yes, I think that the fact that you structured this in a way that people come in and they feel vulnerable and feel connected, I think opens that door for them to feel like they could give more.
We hope it's a teaching machine for asking for help, for vulnerability, for trust, for community, for psychological safety. We want you to get a job, but we also want you to have this experience, right? And because there's cultural change we're going after here. A kind of cultural change which takes time, and we know this, we're in it for the long haul. My volunteer, it's all volunteer team. The core volunteer team is in it. I ask people to make a 2-year commitment, but the core volunteers are like, I'm in it for 10 years, 20 years, whatever. They're in it for the long haul. It's amazing. And that's the kind of time frame you need to think about if you want to start to shift the culture a little bit to a culture where people recognize, you can think of what we're doing in a way as operationalizing concepts that we didn't invent. Others, Brene Brown talks about vulnerability. Amy Edmondson at Harvard Business School talks about psychological safety. Amazing work they've done. We're operationalizing that. We're creating a community where people learn those things by putting them into practice in their job search, for the job search councils, and for their career development in the collaborative gain councils.
Right. And for those listening, it's phyl.org, and I'll add links to all the stuff we're talking about in the show notes.
Yeah, PHYL, baby.
Yeah.
It's easy to remember, Phyl with a Y.
Totally. So, Phyl, I know you talked about your Never Lead Alone book is in process. What else do you have planned? Because I feel like you come up with these amazing ideas and execute on them. I'm just super curious what you've got in store.
What else is in the pot? Well, okay, so I have a memoir I've been working on for years. I really actually started working on it in college. Wow. I had a pretty topsy-turvy childhood. And, the hook of the memoir, kind of one of the things I'm really playing with, is my journey of learning how to go through hard experiences and not get victimized. I talk about the difference between the verb and the noun. Like, you can be victimized. You can have gone through a kind of a trauma or abuse, and hopefully get help and support for that, but not turn that into your identity. Not become the noun. Not become a victim. right? Victimized versus victim, right? And that's really important. And we live in a world where I think we don't have enough conversation about that, and where there's a certain number of people who, and I feel very empathetic towards this because I've done this myself, go through something hard and then get really victimized by it and become a victim, turn that into an identity. And I think that's really problematic. And I think I see this with a lot of men. I think it's particularly problematic for men, and especially men in their middle ages. They can get totally stuck, right? And so I wanted to kind of tell this story about, my journey, of what I went through. And I was in a wheelchair on welfare in a walk-up apartment in the early 90s in New York. And my therapist said to me, "Yeah, this sucks. What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean, what do I want to do? My life is over. I'm in a wheelchair on welfare and a walk up. Like, what can I do? I can." And she's like, "No, I know it's really, really hard, but what do you want to do? You still have choices. What kind of life do you want to lead given these constraints?" And it really pissed me off at first. I wanted her to take care of me. I wanted her to support my sense of victimization and my victim identity. And she just wouldn't do it. And that led to everything I've done since then. You know, and that question, what do you want to do? It's sort of the heart of the Never Search Alone book. It sucks to get laid off. I feel total empathy for that. You know, what do you want to do now? Are you willing to say, okay, I'm going to let that identity go and embrace myself as an individual who has power and agency and independence, and build a web of support around myself? Because yes, I was able to take her up on that offer to figure out what I want to do. And I built this life that ended up, getting out of the wheelchair, getting the medical support I needed, going to work on Wall Street, then going to business school, and then becoming an entrepreneur, and then writing books. But none of this have I done alone. You know, I have had counsels and support in a village around me all the time. And I have had to really struggle along the way with letting go of my humiliation, my anger, my anger at the unfairness. The world is unfair and it sucks. Now, what do you want to do?
Right.
Going back to, her name is Nancy Green, the therapist I worked with back in 1990. Now, what do you want to do? It sucks. Now what? You know, and so I'm working on that memoir, and I've been thinking, and I've sort of been working on it for a long time. I didn't finish it earlier, in part because I knew I needed to grow some more before I knew what it was I wanted to, what the story
Right.
was, and I think that's what the story is. And so that's on a slow burn. It's possible I never finish it. We'll see what else I end up doing. And I want to see if people want the book. I'll have some early readers and see if they think it's a contribution and meaningful. At the least, it's been critical to my development if I never publish it at all.
Right.
I also am planning future books like Never Age Alone. Right. As we get older, we need a support group so that we can manage everything, certainly our health, but our health and to what degree we have wealth and family and friendships, so that we get the support. So, many people are growing lonelier. Many people are growing older and lonelier and isolated. And loneliness is worse than smoking for your health, right? And it's intimidating to go to doctors. And how do you make decisions? And sometimes you have a spouse that's involved and sometimes you don't. But even if you have a spouse that's involved, to have that extra support group where you can really talk through, the questions of what treatment you're going to do, or what are you doing the checkups you need to be doing, and are you doing the social activities or the other things? How do you want to create your life? Growing old sucks. Now, what do you want to do? And it does. I'm still young at heart, but I'm getting older, and things fall apart.
That's unfortunately
so
true.
that's that's something that I've been thinking about. It's a lovely question, though. What else? I'm always I always have 100 ideas, and generally maybe one of them makes it out. And I have ways of testing and thinking about that, and where we go from there. We really want to grow the World of Business Reading Group, the WBRG. I mean, we're at a point now where we've got like 7 faculty members, and we're having 100 students a summer or something like that. It's a summer program, but it is a great program. I'm very proud to say, and I'm not touting myself when I say that. I'm really touting Warren Buffett, because the core of the curriculum are his shareholder letters. Which, see, what happened is that the pandemic hit in 2020, and high school. I don't have kids, but high school kids in my life, cousins, friends, whatever, suddenly were out of classrooms and they weren't getting any live instruction. So I scrambled and I started a Zoom based instruction for the world of business. And I'm a long time reader of Warren Buffett, so I just started using his letters, and I didn't know that it would work with high school students. They love his letters. I mean, this is the best writing out there
Right.
in the business world. They loved it. They loved the real world examples and the philosophy, the ethics, the leadership, the finance, and discovering that they can be a part of that conversation. And so it was a mitzvah. It was like, wow, I couldn't believe that this was so impactful. And so I ended up turning it into a whole program. But we're very early days. We're very early days with that. We're very early days with Never Search Alone. With Never Search Alone, we want to build a platform. It's going to take a couple of years, I think, for me to raise the money from the job seek. I don't want to get investors involved, because that's a whole different
Right.
dynamic. I want this to have so from the people I ask people who've gone through the program if they'll make a donation towards the building of the platform, and people give 30 or 50 or $500 or whatever. I'm also on a speaking tour right now around AI and what I call the 20-year curve, helping people think about cutting through the hype and think about what's real. And I'm donating all my speaking fees to this pot of money that will go to building a platform. I really want to build a platform so that when people join a job search council, they have a login, they have a home for their job search council, all the tools, and it's contextual depending on the stage of the job search. They see the tools that are appropriate to that stage. And I want to be able to have a section where recruiters can come in, where we can charge recruiters to come in and recruit from the community and use their money to improve the program and services and stuff like that. So we have big hopes. We'll have to see what the world allows us to do. If any of your listeners want to volunteer, by the way, we have a lot of openings for volunteers at phyl.org/volunteer. We're looking for video editors and a PR person, and we're looking for data analysts and other things like that. So, yeah.
I love this, Phyl. So, Phyl, you gave me a term I'm now going to use. You are my DoD mentor.
I hope you use it. I want to popularize that term. Everyone should have their own DoD mentor.
It's a phenomenal way to think about it.
Yeah, yeah. And so Buffett and Munger, Katharine Graham is one of my DoD mentors. She was the longtime CEO of the Washington Post Company, the first woman to run a large company in the United States. And she has a wonderful, wonderful autobiography memoir called Personal History. It came out in 1997, won the Pulitzer Prize. Everyone should read that book. I talk about it in Never Search Alone. And I've gotten to know her family a little bit, and that's been great. But I never knew her, and she and her family are definitely DoD mentors of mine. And one of the great things about Katharine Graham is that she was unbelievably good at asking for help, and it really powered her through some critical decisions and built that company, built her career, and built a path for women to follow. She was on the cutting edge of women coming into business, and she asked for help a lot. Really, really moving. She's a teacher to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Phyl, thank you so much for jumping in to do this with me. I know you keep an
Yeah.
incredibly busy schedule.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're doing this, and thanks for being a moderator of Job Search Council 290 and continuing to promote the program. We're still very early days, I want your listeners to know we're in it for the long haul. We want to have 100,000 job search councils. We want 1 million job search
That would be
councils.
phenomenal.
And we want anyone laid off or let go to have a powerful program that is free, a community there to help them with heart and smarts. So
Love it.
thank you for spreading the word. Yeah.